Hey guys, we are back with Messy on Purpose, and I have Leela here with me today, and she is in New Zealand. So we got a fresh face from the other side of the world and a day ahead of me.
The future looks bright, Felicia. The future looks bright.
I love that. Do you want to go ahead and just kind of tell everybody about yourself?
Yeah, I have really realized that the purpose of my life is to embody rebirth, teach rebirth, guide rebirth, and I actually renamed myself this year for my 42nd birthday. So my name is Leela Black, and I've been in business for 17 years. And I think we have been taught in this world to become more and to be more and to do more when actually we need to pare back and do less and actually come back to our core essence, which is the most vulnerable and therefore powerful thing we can do in the world, Felicia.
I love that. What embraced the name change?
Yeah, I feel like a convergence of a few things. I'm 6 years out of no contact with my birth family. I'm, 3 years out of contact with my in-laws. I've left the religion I was raised in and re-niched in my business 7 times now. So once you kind of get a hang of kind of letting things go and relinquishing and kind of creating these sacred endings, they really do generate and birth a new beginning. And I just felt like I was actually named after my mother. I'm fifth generation firstborn girl, which is part of the lineage that I've kind of come into to disrupt. And so being named after my mother, I kind of really struggled my whole life to assert my truth, which many of us are really wanting to create spaces where we can really, really deepen into who we are. And so an official legal name change felt like this really powerful way to reflect that every time. We use our names all the time, Felicia. And so rather than having a name that attached me to a past that I have really given a lot of devotion, a lot of pain to letting go of, it just felt like a really easy next step. I was trepidatious, but it was so liberating to allow.
Oh, I love that. So you had a connection to your previous name. Can I ask what your previous name was?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Lisa Ann, so
Okay.
Lysa hyphen Ann, and my maiden name was Hill. And so my mother's name is Anne, and so Lisa Ann, and then trying to change when I got married to Lisa, and still the name that she gave me felt like it just had so many karmic ties to the life that she wanted me to lead and who she wanted me to be. And so really going, I actually want to live my own life on my own terms. And Leela just feels like, yeah, such a sacred new beginning. I'm about 7 months in, and it's just been glorious. I'm a dress size down. I have fewer friends and far more impact in business, and that has just been so nourishing.
I absolutely love how much you light up when you say your new name. Like you light up.
Thank you for noticing. Yeah, sometimes they're the strangest gifts that we can give ourselves that actually make a world of difference.
It's surprising how such small things can make a load of difference.
Yeah, it was like $200. It's actually relatively easy to legally change your name. It is some admin work, but I think it really is for anyone who has had to uproot and leave significant parts of their lives. I feel like I've met quite a few people now who've changed their name. We're kind of magnetized to each other, and the spelling of your name is so beautiful, and there's such deep significance that is held within those letters, hey?
Yeah, it is an interesting thing. And what's so funny is my name is like so unique in comparison to like my siblings. My siblings have like basic names, which is crazy. And I don't know how or why. So,
You're unique. You came in to hold that, and I love the why because my Lisa was with a Y. So I really think you embody it well, Felicia.
thank you. So do you want to kind of just start at the beginning, kind of everything that happened prior to like this big change and this evolve and like what led up to you like making these big changes because they're not small when we make these big changes. When
Yeah.
you're making changes like distancing yourself or changing your name or changing the environment within you're in and growing a business, those are huge changes that have something behind it that push you.
Wow. Yeah, I really feel like I got to witness an abuse of power in the organization that had been my church, that the further up I went in leadership positions, what was pontificated over, right, the pulpit wasn't actually what was operating and being executed and delivered on the ground. And for me, I just am so deeply committed to integrity. I feel like, how do we trust and co-create with one another if we can't believe the words that we're saying? And so recognizing that I had given 36 years to a religion that didn't deliver on its promises, when I had sacrificed so much. I'd given 10% of my income to that church my whole life, and realizing it wasn't actually doing the good for those in need and the vulnerable as I had believed. I just couldn't be a part of it anymore. That there was this moral kind of standing that was like, I refuse to give any more of my life to something that doesn't deliver. So I feel like anything that is cloaked and deceptive and has an agenda of manipulation, I cannot be a part of it, because when we understand that being complicit means that we're actually supporting and enabling that, it's this real line in the sand where it's like, I simply cannot.
And so did you work within the church? You said you kind of leveled up. Were you working in the church?
Yeah, it was leading the women's organization. So there was a group of women that I would visit with and discuss and show up for and teach and facilitate. And, I loved it. I love bringing people together. I think there's real power in really gathering and combining our knowledge and our wisdom and our resources and our time. It's such a powerful way to bless one another. But when that is being, subjected to other more malign intentions, I feel like it's a facade, right? Yeah. And I feel like 2025 has been the year where a lot of facades have fallen. And so really realizing, if you're going to have a relationship, it has to be reciprocal. So once I realized this, moral refusal within this church organization, I'm like, I'm not being met at all here. So walking away, another 2 years later, wow, I see this again. I'm walking away. And it felt like cutting off my own arm. That like it took me a year or two to grieve. Like, these are not easy things. No one ever wants to do it. And there was so much of me that was, really connected to all of that. But the reality is that if you're not living your truth, you're living someone else's, and it makes us sick. On some level, we can feel that opaqueness that is, really diminishing our power, our truth, and what we're put here to do.
Yeah, and it's like a part of your identity, too. You probably grew up in that church, right?
That's all I knew. It was all I knew. My parents were, my husband's parents were, and you're taught there's all of this sin and darkness out in the world, so you don't ever suspect that this organization will be harboring it itself, right?
Yeah, it's crazy how they can manipulate within it. And it's not even just the organization that you're in. I mean, there's plenty out there. There's a lot of cult-like ones as well. I don't know any details of what yours specifically was, and we don't need to blast that, but
no, I agree, because there are, and any organization will be a reflection of the integrity of the leadership that stand there at the pinnacle. And so for me, I don't want to be a part of anything that doesn't nourish. And the most confronting thing was how much happier I was after bringing that ending. It was so, the joy and the peace and the freedom was so confronting, because I just had to cry and grieve the loss and, this idea of false belonging, that I felt like that was family and I felt like that was home, but it actually never was. And the more true we are to ourselves, the people around me now are just such authentic, devoted people of integrity. It's just so much more comfortable. And just to think, how blinded we can become to accept what we've been taught is normal. And so I think anyone listening can relate to that, right? We've all been taught, no, this is normal. Everyone does this, right? This is normally. And it's like, well, if that doesn't actually feel nourishing and good for each of us, who has the guts to call it out?
Yeah, and it's like no different than just like a relationship. So like you're dating somebody and it's a toxic relationship, but you're not leaving because you're familiar with this person and like this just feels like home. It's kind of that same thing.
It's the exact same thing, and we've done it, with friends, or, we really naturally do it when we move and we change countries or we change schools, or we go to college or whatever it might be, that they're the kind of rites of passage when we do make those shifts. But sometimes we allow life to take us there rather than initiating it ourselves. And this idea of really being in a relationship with someone where it's familiar, when that familiarity is suffocating, how do we let ourselves really breathe?
Was it really hard? Like, did you lose? I don't know, like, exactly how your church was set up, but did you lose a lot of, like, friends and family due to leaving the church?
Yeah, it was my whole world, because we're taught to socialize within that organization. So I had friends that were outside of the church, but everyone within the church, you kind of become an exile. And, no one would engage with me in conversation. There'd maybe be waves and they would just quickly pass by. And I really understood that I was a dangerous woman. That when you refuse something, people don't want to know why, because they're like, wow, that's dangerous, And so I started realizing I was like a threat, because I said no and I objected and I declined. And how horrendously judged a woman is when she walks away. That was illuminating. No one wanted to hear that it was good for us. No one wanted to hear that we were happy. No one wanted to hear that it was inspiration and revelation that called us to leave a church that we felt God telling us to leave. That's not something that people who believe in God want to hear. And I found that, really, really confronting to lose my whole way of operating in life, everything about the structure of going on a Sunday and all these activities, Bible study every day, losing those structures. It just felt like this deep cavernous hole of falling in and not knowing what you're going to find there. And you find yourself, you find who you are without what you were conditioned to be. Hey,
Was it really hard to, like, adjust to that transition, or was it kind of exciting? Because some people handle things differently. Like, it could be like exciting because it's a change and you're kind of pushing against, that little rebel in us. Or it could be just full of anxiety, but I know this is what I have to do, and you just have to push through and get through it.
Yeah, I feel like it was really both. It was a definitive, I remember the night that I was not wanting to pray about it, Felicia, because I didn't want to know whether I was meant to leave or not. And so I knew I needed to, but I was delaying. And one night I just couldn't sleep, and it was like 3 a.m. and I got up and I was praying, and I was like, what's going on? I need to sleep. And they were like, you need to ask us whether this is true for you or not. And I was like, I don't want to, because I don't want to face that reality. And they're like, well, that's cool. Don't sleep then. And I love my sleep. So I'm like, whoa, you held sleep over me. It was kind of like there would be no rest for me. And so the agony of having that carpet pulled out from underneath me, where everything that I had devoted my life to was suddenly void and untrue. It's the most, like, confronting thing for our brain to adjust to. But like you said, it's this calm and peace within yourself that you're doing the right thing. And my life has got loads of polarity. So I've been devoted and obedient, and now I'm like this dangerous, rebellious, woman who follows the beat of her own heart and invites everyone to do the same. And that seems so wild, so animalistic. Like, I love wearing animal print, because I'm like, oh, I'm untamed. There is no domestication that reigns here any longer. And that makes you a confronting person. But when you know the alternative, being complicit and really allowing yourself to be so small and so suffocated, that's a level of pain that some people also don't have the privilege of knowing. So that polarity for me allowed the juxtaposition of utter terror, feeling like I was abandoning my own life and everything that I knew to be true, with the deep liberation of knowing that I was setting out on a course that was meant for me. So you get
It's got to be empowering. Like, you have a confidence to you for making that big change that you needed, but it was tough.
Yeah, conviction is the word I would give. And I feel like that only comes when we really digest our grief. That the grief of realizing what I had been taught wasn't true took quite a bit of time, because you don't want to accept it. But when you really acknowledge the truth, you get this conviction that if you're going to allow yourself to feel that depth of pain, then you're going to hold yourself to live to what you then believe is true. And I feel like we're not taught how to intentionally grieve. We're not taught how to name the losses and acknowledge what didn't go the way we want, because we should just be grateful and for everything we've been blessed for. And I'm like, yeah, I was always grateful, but I always carried this deep shadow of unmet grief because I didn't know how to connect and commune with it. You know, we're taught how to grieve the passing of our loved ones. We go to the funeral and we all cry, we wear black and we eat food and make small talk. And I go, that's not actual grieving, because whatever we've removed ourselves from, the part of ourselves that was connected to that experience also dies. And we're just not prepared to really know how do you be with the parts of yourself you've cut off, and you bury them. You know, I had to bury these parts of myself and put flowers on the grave and just stand over it like it was just the most cherished loved one. So leaving everything that you know, it just allows you to be more clear and decisive around continuing to leave anything else that isn't true. I didn't expect that I would continue, which is why this is a really big conversation, because wherever we all are, we're taught to accumulate and gather and hold. Accumulate, gather, hold. That makes you successful. That's wealth. That's everything that we should aspire to be. And I'm like, we haven't been taught to let go and relinquish and release and shed. So everyone's like walking around like, oh, I got this, oh, I got that, you know, and we're like walking through life holding so much. Where's the presence? Where's our ability to look into each other's eyes and tell each other the truth of where we really are? My children are honest with me. My husband's honest with me. My friends are. My clients are. And I bring that purity of honesty that is dangerous. Like, it's so, isn't that wild, Felicia? That like telling the truth can be so dangerous and provocative and confronting. I'm like, what else have we been doing?
It is crazy. Like, a lot of people can't handle it either when you're like overly honest. Because I'm definitely one of those people. Like, I'm not going to give you the cookie cutter, nice version. I'm going to give you the hard truth.
I love it. I celebrate it. That's hard won for you, right?
Yeah, and it's not really even for me. I don't need to give everybody the truth, but I think everybody deserves it.
Yeah, totally. Because we're making life decisions, like we're crafting lives, right, around information that may or may not be true. And I really think living a sacred life is making sure everyone has the clearest, most true information so we can all navigate accordingly, whatever that is.
Well, there's so much false information out there as it is, right? Like, we have social media. We know 90% of what you're scrolling is not real information. Yeah. But then you have your personal relationships where I don't even think people get vulnerable enough and honest enough within them that they've ever even like had a real connection with somebody, because you don't really have a connection until you're vulnerable and you're real.
You know, and that's it. And that's why consumerism has such a pull, and why we become so addicted to so many things: sex, shopping, alcohol, drugs, gossiping, whatever it might be, right? Pick your poison. But I go, whatever that is, I love this quote that you can't get enough of what you don't need. And 100%. Whenever we're like trying to get some need, like you can't get enough. And so you can only buy so many clothes and drink so much alcohol before you're just repeating that over and over. But the core of vulnerability is actually being in our true essence, where we are so powerful, but we have no control. And this is where we don't have that attachment to, if I do this, then this will be the outcome, right? So we've been taught socially to manipulate and coerce and deceive so that we can get what we want. But I go, where's the end of that? And when do we stop doing that with our partner? And when do we stop doing that with our children? And do we train our children to then move in the world, replicating that behavior? Like, that's so abhorrent and repulsive for me. I would rather tell the truth to someone and have them go, I can no longer be connected to you because of that truth. And I go, I respect that. Like, go well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's so liberating. And now the belonging that's possible when you truly meet with someone who hears and knows your truth and then reciprocates in acceptance and appreciation and regard, that level of safety, I didn't know that. I never had that. We called each other brother and sister at church, told my family that we loved each other. But you just go, where is it? Like I'm chewing and I'm chewing and I'm not getting anything. I'm still hungry. And I think that soul level hunger, it's just really screws us over because we're desperate for it, because we need sincerity, we need genuine connection.
And I think a lot of it's shaped around, so people kind of hide who they are because they want everyone to like them, instead
Yeah.
of settling for the fact that you don't need everyone to like you, you just need your people to like you.
Yeah, and the contrast is when you have 100 people that don't know you and pretend to like you and pretend to reveal who they think you'll like in them, that level of game playing takes up so much bandwidth that nothing can ever evolve, nothing can happen. How do you form a romantic relationship when you've been conditioned to be in that way? Right? And all you're going to do is attract someone who is going to unconsciously deny and deceive you into thinking that they are who they think you want them to be, which is such a perilous game. Such a perilous 18 years into marriage with my husband, and we are such different people from when we married. And I think that was, one of the blessings I felt most fortunate for, is to retain my marriage. And that wasn't a given. I've known plenty of people to leave church organizations and their marriage did not make it because that was our bond. We dated because we were in church together, and that was everything that we were tracking our lives on. So I feel like people don't maybe sometimes have the taste and the texture of what sincere, devoted, genuine love actually is. And if we knew what that tasted like, we would never be willing to eat all of the other muck that we've been taught is delicious.
When it came to your relationship, so you decided you wanted to leave the church. I assume you had like an honest conversation with your husband. How did that go?
Yeah, we'd been talking about it for a little while. He had the same concerns as me. He knew 6 weeks before me. And that's why I was normally I'm in the lead in our relationship. And he got an answer to his prayer. And he came home and he told me, and I was like, the floor, your whole tummy drops out from under you. There's this gaping hole. And I remember being in that moment, the shock and the devastation. And that was me being like, okay, I can accept that for you, but I'm not ready yet. And that's why I was delaying getting my answer, because I knew if I knew, I'd need to do something about it. So he actually said, well, I'll stay with you and I'll support you and I'll keep coming to church with you until you're ready. And once again, like you cry with appreciation, because the generosity for someone to do that, because it didn't bother him once he knew. He didn't like it. He didn't want to be there. But he also didn't want to abandon me or shortcut my process to find an authentic answer for myself. And this is where I'm like, I really lucked out with this man. Like, what a gift to have someone hold space for your decision making. And this is where, above and beyond beginning our relationship in the church, is that authenticity and integrity were also core values for us. And I chose him because he kept his word and he told the truth even when it made him look bad. And I was like, I can partner with this, because you got to tell the truth sometimes. It's not always pretty, like you're saying. And I feel, really, really fortunate. And I now cultivate so much reverence for honoring other people's space and timing to come to their own decisions for that reason. That was real medicine for me that day.
Yeah, I can kind of relate to the whole honest husband thing. Mine's the same way, and that was definitely a quality that you appreciate, even if they say the wrong thing to you sometimes.
Yeah, it's always what we want. But it is, it is wholesome. I'm so glad that you've been blessed with that too, Felicia.
It makes a big difference. So that's interesting. He left the church first, basically. He left. In his mind, he was gone.
He was gone. Yeah, 6 weeks
Yeah.
he waited. And then we went through due diligence, and because we're in leadership positions, we met with our leader and then the next leader up, and brought our concerns forward. And the response was also shocking. Like, oh yeah, we know there's discrepancy, and we know that the funds are not always used for what they say they were. But we want to be in heaven forever with our family, so we're just going to, there's so much reprimand from up to down, but there's very little feedback systems available to give feedback to your superiors. And once again, right, this is a patriarchal construct, and so of course there's no pathway to hold them accountable. Like, you kind of start realizing oh, that's why that was the way that it was. And so once again, we were devastated to hear that we thought we must know something no one else does. Like, no, we know, we're okay with it. And we're like, ooh, we're even more not okay now. And they kept on encouraging us, like, yeah, you might need a bit of space, but as soon as you're ready, come back. And we're like, you're not hearing us. We're out of here. And we are not coming back. And so that's like these, where it's just like, no, don't leave. And it's like, why? Why wouldn't you hear that, right? And this is where this conditioning can just distort us until we're just walking around so covered with so much agenda and so much falsity that you have to keep on weaving more, right, false agenda and falsity on top of it, and blah.
It almost feels like they like tell you that you're gonna fail and you'll be back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that we're going to be wrong, that we're going to, we'll forgive you. You come back and we'll forgive you. Because everyone's waiting for us to like be sinners, right? They're waiting for us to have like fornicated or done something wrong or bad, and we left because we were sinners. And it was just like we were keeping all of the commandments and being obedient right up until that moment. But once again, that doesn't make for a good story for them. And so I'm like, that's cool. I don't need anyone to approve of my decisions. But this life is my responsibility to live it in a way that I think's true. And I feel like, realizing how much solid foundation strengthening love is in that when you really commit to it. That conviction I spoke about before. I just love the word conviction now, because you can tell when someone speaks that their truth, and I think there are many truths. I think we all have our own path. But when someone knows that something is true for themselves, that level of conviction, I think, inspires reflection. Like, well, what do I know? What do I believe is true? And I think that they're very important questions to ask ourselves, particularly moving into 2026. Where do we stand? Where are we going to go? This is what I believe.
And how long has it, you said, that you've been out of the church?
Yeah, 6 years, 7 years.
6 years.
It was in
And
2018 or 19.
Did you guys both have jobs outside of the church too, or did you have to like, yeah?
Yeah. But it was our whole social world. So, I was probably, just left with, 2 handfuls of friends, and you don't really know. So we didn't ever really belong in the church, but then leaving the church, you're such a unique person, you don't really fit in the outside world as well. So I tend to really connect with people who have been put or placed themselves on the outside. Outsiders, misfits, people who feel like they're black sheep or they don't belong. It's just like, and there's this like, and there's so many different variations of that, like leaving our own birth country, or, walking away from a degree or a job that we've kind of really built up for decades. Anyone who has been brave enough to do that, they just relish that conversation with me, and the regard and respect we have for people, right, who have really gone, no.
It is, it's almost like the type of people you attract, right? So like if you're in the church and stuff, you're going to be attracting those type of people. If you're a little bit more of an outsider, you're going to attract more outsiders. It all really just depends on who you are and what you put out there. You're not going to attract people just because you want to attract them, right? You have to be that person.
Well, and we can't pretend to make out that we are the thing we want to attract either, right? And
too.
is a really big part of my work. That where do we pare back and really get honest with ourselves about who we really are? And as we do that, we meet with the people who have really come to acceptance with who they are as well. But it's not pretty. And I've moved in, and I've moved countries, and I studied world politics in my degree. I studied Japanese for 12 years, and I've once again more things I just walked away from. Just suddenly it was like, I can't do that anymore. So now that I'm 42 and I've changed my name, I'm like, my life is making sense. I'm just here to kind of go as far as I can and then just give it all up. And I've got a Capricorn ascendant, and I hate giving up hard work. Like if I've devoted myself to something for a long time, oh, and so I feel like a good poster girl for rebirth. I'm like, yeah, pick me. I'll do that so that anyone else who's really teetering on whether they stay in deception with themselves or actually go with what they know to be true can just receive that little bit of confirmation that it is always better. And the life that opens up every time we step across that threshold of whatever we've left behind, it's infinitely more like we, in walking away from my in-laws, we walked away from our first home. It was devastating for me. My parents always rented. We moved a lot when I was younger. So that was my first house in my whole life. And so walking away from that, the grief there, that you acquire something, right? We're taught that's success, you've acquired it. And now to relinquish it, I'm like, well, now I'm further behind. And then not 2 years later, we received our current house, which is far more beautiful and perfect and a sanctuary of peace. But you don't know, and I think that familiarity you spoke about with the relationship is what jams us up, is that we go, oh, I know this. But we don't know how good it can be on the other side, which is the privilege of listening to each other's life experiences. We can be that little bit of a sign for one another. There could be something better for you on the other side. And I believe when you act right with authenticity and conviction and embody who you really are, life has so much prepared for us that we would never hold on to some of the less than right resonant people and situations if we knew the glory of what was waiting for us. Like, that's what I want to be like, oh, like just trumpet that into the world, because I wish I had done all of it sooner, Felicia. And that's been the grief I've been moving through still. I really wish I'd done it sooner.
We always wish we started sooner, though.
Yeah. But we do it when we do it, and thank goodness we get it done.
Yeah, that's all that matters, is that you eventually take action on what needs to be done.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about kind of where you're at now. So it's been 6 years later. You said you're still kind of working with some of the grief. You have a new group of friends, new circle you're running with. How is everything?
I think buoyancy would be my word. There's this kind of lightness and effortlessness of the right things coming in at the right time, and then co-creatorship. So in my past, I probably shouldered a lot and pushed a lot forward, whereas now it's just so much more light and easy to be who I am and hold what I know is true for me. And then other people just gravitate towards that. So last year, I actually invested a whole year into intentional grief. I put my business on part-time and really reduced my work. All my clients knew I was actively grieving. They loved it because they're like, you're really modeling for us the bravery to go into the feelings that we're taught to ignore. And I live 10 minutes from a mountain, and there was this regular hike I did, and there was a grief portal. And I would just stop at this particular place. And at the beginning, I said a prayer and just said, what do I do with all of this grief? It felt like there was an ocean within me, and every day the current was moving in a different direction. And it's so enormous to live with severe and I think we all know grief this year. Like last year, I'm like, maybe 50% of us are there. This year, everyone knows deep and devastating grief: loss of a parent, loss of a child, loss of a friend, loss of a career, loss of a house, loss of a beloved pet, loss of who we once were. And in that prayer, I was told, and I pray to Mother now. There's no Father God in my world. I'm like, Mother God. And I said, what do I do with all this grief? And she said, just pour it out a little bit at a time. So I would go on this beautiful hike and reach this place and then just sit and just kind of let my tears flow. But there's something that I would be releasing or letting go of. We have all these attachments mentally to how things are meant to be and what you think you deserve and what you think you need to be happy. And I just had to keep putting them all down. And so that was my 2024. And 2025, I was like, oh, I'm starting to feel okay. I didn't feel happy for 6 months this year. And the last few months, I'm like, I've never felt this much vitality. I've never felt this much clarity. I feel very fortunate that I am acquainted with who I really am, and that is known in the world on a personal and professional level. So yeah, I've started a community this year. So I teach feminine business resonance and really guiding professionals who love serving people to really get present to their own grief and allow that to bring renewal and conviction and keep shedding professionally who you thought you were and what you wanted to be, and really sincerely show up in that vulnerability we spoke about before, because that is what we are craving. We want to hear from real people with real stories and their real heart. And the moment you're near that, it is just the most encouraging, fortifying, strengthening elixir, because we all have to keep doing it from here on. So I really feel like I'm alive, Felicia.
That's amazing. So I do want to dive into your business a little bit, but I can just out of like curiosity more than anything.
Yeah, please, wherever you want to go.
But before we dive into that, I'm curious on, so you're clearly still very religious in some way. You have some type of faith, right? Like not necessarily tied to a specific religion.
Yes.
And I think that's huge. So I want to talk about that a little bit. And the reason is because like I have faith too,
Yes.
but I don't go to church. And a lot of people within a church feel like if you don't go to church, you don't have faith.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, and I think what's wonderful is that I had very close friends from different religions growing up. So I'm the sort of person who always had friends with different beliefs. And that's always been really important for me. I think when we're in the dark on our own, you've got to know what you believe in. And I would never throw shade on anyone's belief, because if you don't have that, I wouldn't be here, right? I think many of us can say that. And I have respect for people who don't believe as well. I don't know how they do it. Like, I can't, I'm not that strong, I'm not that capable. But, for me, the dismantling of my religious framework that I had built a life and an existence and a family around, right? We taught our children as well. It's a grueling process, because the baby in the bathwater is like, well, you can throw out the bathwater and keep the baby, but it's not that simple, right? There's an intricate puzzle of really navigating, okay, well, now I know that isn't true, and then you don't know where you can hold attachment to something else being true or untrue. You've got to pick up every piece and turn it around and upside down, but suddenly that piece could be connected to 20 pieces, and suddenly you've lost a whole pillar of your life. And so I feel like people that I've met, and I've met quite a few people now, as we do after we've gone through this journey, who have dismantled their previous belief system, they talk about it being very tentative and arduous to actually adopt any new belief. So luckily for me, I actually had something to go back on, that as a child, I felt a deep connection with nature. I felt this real reverence for life and for animals and babies, and this kind of idea that life itself has an intelligence. And so now I can connect with, okay, mother life, and this universe can be a great womb, and we're inside being connected to her still. And so for me, I actually went back to something that predated being taught. But still, I mean, that was so complicated, Felicia. And whenever I listen to other people's beliefs, I think there's a sacredness to that space. And like, we don't share it with everyone because it is so, so valuable, right, for us. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy to have to rebuild your belief system. I would never, ever wish for that for anyone. And thus, I really feel like I've been given a gift of real grace and compassion when people are dismantling something. I can really slow the moment down and bring a lot of grace and tenderness so that they can kind of sift through with soft music. Because sometimes we can't look at something until someone is there with us having done that process, right? Because it's just, we go, wow, I can't. I don't want to die at 10,000 more deaths. And I just go, I'll die 10,000 more. Like I'm in at this point, Felicia, right? It's not getting out now.
It's as you do it more, it's almost like, all right, what's next?
Oh, I get excited. I just go like reefing around in my heart, shake it up a little bit, see what rattles, and be like, and who do you belong to? One of the biggest things that I've found actually in this process, which is, I think, fascinating, tell me if you like this idea, but inherited shame. that when I was dismantling my religious beliefs, I actually found this truckload of inherited shame where I'd been taught, right, systematically, this makes you bad, this makes you wrong, this makes you bad, this makes you wrong. And I went, you tinker with it a little bit, and I'm like, wow, that's really not true. And so in throwing that out, and this is why I just love the process now. I'm like the Marie Kondo of the heart. I'm just like, how much can we cast out and actually find a homecoming and a belonging with being who we really are in the world? Because living in our own bodies is the only place that we're ever truly going to stay in this world. And a lot of people don't actually know who they are or what is true for them. And I feel like what a reclamation to be able to actually find home within.
I think that shame you're talking about, it's not even just like, obviously church values throw a lot of that, right? There's so much that you're just completely wrong if you
Oh yeah,
do
bad
anything wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you get that too in like your family as you grow up. Like there's
Absolutely.
things that you're shamed for. You get it in school,
In your
for not
culture, yeah, the
abiding.
country, yeah, that you've grown up in as well.
Yeah. It all just really depends on your environment, and it's full of things that'll tell you like this is no, this is bad. And it's not necessarily true because you're a unique individual and you can make your own choices. If you want to get tattoos, it's fine. If you want, if you want to use substances, it's fine. If you want to use certain words, it's fine. Like
Yeah.
if you want to marry another culture, that's fine. And like there's all these things that are thrown at people in so many different areas of their lives, and most people they're too embarrassed to go against it because that requires to be vulnerable to the ridicule that's coming back.
That's where they get us, that there is some sort of an attack that happens when we're criticized and ridiculed and critiqued, that we feel othered, right? And last year I really found this beautiful mantra that I belong in unbelonging. And so the many counts of people putting me on the outside, I hated it and I hated it and I hated it. But I knew, right, the alternative was being complicit and allowing myself to agree to something I didn't agree with in order to get belonging. And so I just had no idea that once you see shame as a social tool to elicit conformity, I'm like, whoa, that's huge. So being able to recognize that inherited shame, that person was taught that. So I started forgiving the person who taught the person the way they shamed me. And that was really when I really started loosening it up, because I think forgiving the people who shame us is very arduous work. Ultimately, I feel like in this life, we need to give that an attempt, even an attempt. But when we start forgiving, right, the abuser of our abusers, or the person who shamed us, I feel like we're really starting to loosen up. And then I could forgive myself more. Then I could stop shaming myself more. And that's when we start realizing, right, we can free ourselves, and just as hurt people, free people, free people. And I'm like, gosh, I can't be shamed anymore. I've started talking about what it's like in the world having 14 double G breasts, what it's like in the world not having family for Christmas. What is it like casting away your whole life? And it's freeing. That in exile, there's actually freedom. But once again, no one's going to tell you that. No one's going to tell
No.
you that being an outcast will be the most liberating, freeing, delicious time of your life. And I'm like, if we all knew.
Everyone just wants you to conform to whatever is normal for them, which
For sure. To
isn't.
keep their
It's,
internal rule book ticked and, secure. That is where they're going to shame themselves if they buck their own internal rule system. And so they're more than happy to restrain you with the same restraint that they've been given. And when you see that someone's shaming you with what deeply hurt them, that really shifted me. That when I see it now, because I still get it and it will still come. I don't ever expect that won't happen. But I can go immediately to grace and compassion and realize someone once fooled that human into thinking that was true for them too. And so I can just observe it, and it just falls on the ground. And then I carry on being who I am and what I'm committed to. So once again, I feel like we don't really realize that you can get out of that framework of shame that families are built on, communities are built on, countries are built on. and human beings are built on. We are not allowed to be forthright in owning our truth and speaking it freely in the world. You will be shamed and shunned for doing that. I'm just here to say, is that a bad thing?
And you know what's crazy? You kind of touched base on that whole forgiveness thing, and then the other side of it, because the forgiveness is very important, right? If we don't forgive, we're holding on to something that doesn't affect the person that we're holding it against. It only affects us. So that is like a huge thing. And then the other part is, we have to understand. Some people don't even understand why they're doing the things that they're doing,
Of course.
and
Yeah. Neither did we when we did it. I
no.
shamed other people the same way I was shamed. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just following the code of conduct I'd been given.
So why hold on to something they said when they don't even realize they said anything wrong? And maybe to them it was the right thing to say, and maybe they don't know any better and they're doing the best that they can, and unless we can't force them to see anything differently, and we also can't judge them for not seeing it clearly because they haven't gotten to that point.
Oh, it's so beautiful, Felicia, to see the grace that you've arrived in. I can tell you've done some hefty forgiveness work, and it really does create softness, hey? And I think we're afraid to do it because it does feel personal, and it hit with the enormity of this cataclysmic earthquake in our inner world. And some of us, take those judgments and right, we reoffend and we re-perpetuate that with ourselves over and over. And particularly women do this. Men that are hurt will hurt other people. Women who get hurt themselves. And I was my biggest victim, right, from those who hurt me. And so, like you're saying, it's just so beautiful to hear your words that, that's harming us. It's not affecting the other person. But yeah, releasing that label that we put on them, it just releases us. And, it's the hack. It's the shadow work hack of the century. And that's when we can really start kind of floating and gliding in the world, rather than, what I realized is that until I forgave, I would re-perpetuate.
Yeah,
And
I
that is
mean,
so harrowing.
you can't keep judging people and holding on to their lack of growth in that area, because it only again affects you. It's the same thing as like the forgiveness. Holding on to a grudge will affect you. Just forgive them. Don't judge people because of where they're at in the place. Maybe you just have to distance yourself from that person.
That's it. And, that's really the breakdown and walking away from my family, is that communicating boundaries, expressing the vulnerability of when you do this is how, like, I hired so many coaches and I did so much work to get to the place. And then you start realizing that it takes two. And that as I was perpetually giving like the thousandth chance, right, to be met in mutual respect, by me staying involved in that exchange, I was enabling the abuse. And, I actually got to the point of love where I'm like, I'm not going to let the atrocities that that person is perpetuating on me stack up any further, knowing they're going to need to face that at some point. I'm not going to let it build up anymore. And this is where we have to evaluate some of these concepts of love, that, we go, it's blood, it's family, but they really love me. And I go, would you let a stranger on the street talk to you that way, treat you that way? And we never would. But once again, we want to be a part of the group. And look, if there's anyone who wanted that, it is me. It has been my core need to be a part of the group. But my life is like showing me again and again is that we can stand with ourselves or we can be with the group. And for me, I had to realize that there was that very important decision that when you stand with yourself, you stand with people who can stand with you of their own free will. There's no control, there's no coercion, there's no manipulation needed. There's some people that just want to stand by you because they are committed to the same things as you. And I'd never seen that modeled. That for me now sincerely feels like the most genuine love. They're the people that I have around me now. And I wish I could transmit that, right, to that version that I was, who was desperate. And as I said, you can't get enough of what you don't need. And so when they're saying, I love you, you're like, but I need more, right? And then I look like the desperate one when they're just feeding me empty food. And I'm like, chowing down, going, I'm going to feel full at some point. Do you have more? Do you have more? And it's just like, there's nothing in it. There's nothing there.
Well, and you don't need as much from other people when you're content with yourself. That too
Yeah.
is huge.
Huge.
I definitely want to. I know we've been kind of going on this one for like 50 minutes, but I want to dive into your business still too, because I want to just learn a little bit about it and like tell other people about it too. And it's along the lines of everything that we've been talking about. So it's definitely a great thing to share to help people that are, stuck in those places that we were both stuck in before.
That's it. And I feel like, business is just another context for all these things that play out. We do these same things in business. We pontificate, we try to create the illusion of who we think will be worthy of value and wealth and receiving money. And then you got to prop that up. You got to keep building it up in the background and, using alcohol or, not being present to the people that are in our lives so that we're pretending so much. And I think for me, I'm 17 years into business now, and I started, as a life coach, and I was 6 years in eating disorder recovery, and then I did 3 years in what I called heart healing, toxic parent recovery, because that's where I was in my life. And wherever kind of the mountain that I get to the top of, then there's all these people that they're at the bottom, and they go, "Can you take me there?" And I was like, "Oh gosh, well, I love the journey. Yes, let's go." And so I feel like, we've been taught that business is this place where we convince everyone that we're successful. And then we try to elicit the money to transfer that success. But I think when we really commit to actually really making that journey to the top of our own mountain on a personal level, there will always be people that go, how did you do that? Like, what did you take up? What track did you follow? Are there any tips? And I feel like that's all my business has been as I kept on progressing through different niches. There would always be this group of people that said, yeah, but how'd you do it? And I feel like feminine business for me comes from the integrity of reflecting the truth of the journey that you've been on. And I think that's why, the blessing to be on this podcast with you and start sharing these stories is that professionally, at some level, we're pretending.
I mean, you have to kind of just figure it out as you go, right? There's not a answer to everything. Yes, we have Google, we have ChatGPT, we have all of these tools, but like, there's not an answer to how to build a business or how to work through your feelings or your situations or your traumas and things like that. You have to dig deep into yourself, and that's how you kind of figure it out as you go. And then you can share your story, and yes, it'll resonate with so many people, but it's not going to be exactly the same.
No, and allowing that evolution is what I teach. I've been specialized in rebirthing for 7 years, because the further we go, the more we realize where we are pretending and where do we want to become more committed to being that sincere, genuine version of ourselves that's more vulnerable, as we said before, and therefore more powerful, because the magnetism of that vulnerability is exponentially more expansive than the version that we were conditioned and taught made us valuable. And so it's kind of this, shedding process where something's unraveled in our life. Often for my clients, it's on a personal level. And, they're all leaders and they have this incredible body of knowledge, but the grief that's there, they can't keep up with the operations that they used to. So we restructure their business and the way that they represent their title and their new body of work and pare it back and really reduce it. And that is able to just amplify and expand so dramatically. Once again, this idea that we're taught to be more. And so everyone's like got all these certifications and I've done this for 20 years and I've done that, but where are you? There's this golden thread that weaves between our personal life and our professional life, and that is so vulnerable to expose. The moment we do, people have that feeling in their chest of, I can follow and be with this person because they've done it. And now that we've got knowledge, we're like, no, I don't want more information. No, I don't want to know that. No. We're trying to limit our exposure to knowledge and information. And it's about that real embodied expertise. That on a personal level, we're tracking privately something that if we can tell the truth professionally and publicly about what that is, well, that you can't absolutely compete with that in any way, because the nuances of creating results only comes down to that deep devotion to trial and error, which all of us are, which you are, which this beautiful podcast is, which your life is also. And they're the parts that we've been taught in business are not actually valuable, when that is now the only value that's left.
It's so funny because people will put up this image that they think people want to see.
Mm-hmm.
But people will resonate and connect with somebody who is more vulnerable, puts the mess out there, and just kind of shares whatever it is they have going on in a clear and honest, vulnerable story. And I've seen it, so that's why I started this podcast. And I've said this so many times, but I started this podcast because it was because so my husband was part of mentorships. We would go to meetups. You see everything on social media. That's all the highlight reels. And honestly, like, I started this because that's not what everyone needs to hear. If you're in a mentorship, I don't need to know that you did these things and got successful. I need to know what you messed up on. What was the mess in between, right? Where was the nitty gritty where you grew and you had to adjust, or where you almost failed but you kept going? Those are the things people want to hear. And I think sharing those makes such a difference. So that's kind of what this is all based on.
Oh, snap. Really beautiful to hear that from you. I didn't realize the value of how potent vulnerability could be until I started realizing that the personal trainer that I had was secretly a bulimic, and she confided in me. And someone that I knew in my local community was a relationship counselor, and she can, so my life, Felicia, is people just tell me the truth. It's been my whole life. It's my magic and it's my curse for sure. But this, marriage counselor came up to me and she's like, I've secretly been divorced for a year and I have no idea how I'm going to tell people this. It could be the end of my career, right? So then we're attached to the construct that we propped up, and then it starts falling. And then we try to prop it up more. And it's like these people that we've been taught are successful are using substances, are receiving, money from someone else to prop up their operations. And because I've been in business for so long, I see behind the scenes like you got to see. And I go, okay, it's the time in human evolution where we start going, okay, this is actually me. Right? And that is what I feel so blessed and fortunate has always allowed me to prosper, and therefore give me the time to keep on pioneering, because so many people aren't good at honestly grieving and finding belonging with their truth. And so I know the texture of when your body quakes and quivers for 3 hours because you don't know how you're going to keep existing after you've just lost your whole world. I know you will breathe again on the other side of that. Go into it, go deeper. And I love that you are committed and prepared to share some of the mess so that we can actually find the relatability of, I don't follow someone who's perfect. I follow someone who is loving and courageous enough to show me the shitstorm they passed through in order to get to where they are now.
That's what I love about it, like everyone's willing to share a story if you give them somewhere to share it. And that's what this whole thing is based on.
I love it. I'm so moved. I felt immediate resonance with you and meeting you today. Like, such a joy to meet with other people who are really committed to this, and you no doubt inspire so many people by your own embodiment of your imperfection. And you are so beautiful and astonishing and confident and clear. But I know that you've been on a really big journey in order to get there, right? We don't just become these things in the world. And that's the idea that we've been fed, and it's simply not true. It keeps everyone away from that very thing.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work, and you have to be willing to do the work and go into the areas that we don't want to touch.
So that's my favorite. Yeah, that's my favorite. So I think once I realized that everyone is like, oh, it's so revolting and disgusting to go into the darkness, and that really is where all of the treasure is, really just waiting for someone who's brave and curious enough just to dig around a bit and be like, what could this be? And because you find it again and again and again within yourself, and anyone who trusts you enough to go into that process and experience with you, that I just have no fear now. And I do have fear going deeper into my own darkness, which is why that's my personal practice. I'm journaling every day to make sure I'm just edging closer. Like, what else am I ashamed of? What else am I afraid of? Where else am I pretending? And I feel like if we can see more people telling the stories of the beauty and the peace and the power that we can find by going into those revolting places, we would all be a lot more willing to go there.
1,000%. I think it helps a lot. It helps with that connection, right? Knowing you're not alone. You're not the only person going through this. Because I think a lot of times we get kind of caught up in our head and we think like, oh my God, why is everything happening to me? Me. But there's so many people out there dealing with the same things or maybe worse things.
That's it. And it's a secret. And I've self-published 4 books now. And in my first book, I was really honest about my miscarriage. You know, my first pregnancy, we miscarried at 8, nearly 9 weeks. And I felt like I moved through that. And I wanted to really share my experience of that in one of the chapters. But I was really shocked at how many people had really illegitimized the grief around their miscarriage because it wasn't right. You know, if you give birth to a baby and then it passes away, it's somehow legitimate. And it's like, who came up with that? You know, it's just, that was still a baby to me. I was still anticipating holding a child and the timeline that was. And so the moment that I knew it was time to really share that story, all these people emerged in my life who finally had the safety to say, not allowing myself to grieve my miscarriage has held me back for this many years, and it's shown up like this and this and this. And then they would just put it down before my feet, right? They would find that pathway to really intentionally grieve that loss. And so I have been good in all transparency at confiding my stories in books. Like this year I'm like, do I write another book? And I'm like, no. Tell your story with your voice, from your body, on podcasts and on social media. And that's what I've committed to, because I can go and pack all that up and make it really easy to digest for other people and hide it within the cover of a book. And I'm like, no more. I disallow you from writing again. It's 300 to 400 hours to write a book in my process for myself before we had AI. And so now I'm just like, I want to share stories from a place of verbalizing, because there's something in the way that our voice sounds when it reaches other people that has the power, I think, to unlock more profoundly than reading words when we can't hear a voice or see a face, Felicia.
And you can connect with so many more people, because I know there's obviously a good amount of readers, but there's a lot more people that absorb social media.
That's it. Yeah, it's the time. It's the time for storytelling. And it's safe to come out now. I feel like anything that you have done that you feel scared about telling people publicly, someone's already done it. So much more than you. And we've got all those examples now. You know, we're really seeing this time when there's so many people who bravely and courageously went past what we ever knew was possible. And for me this year, both of my children are displaying and demonstrating entrepreneurial skill sets. My daughter crochets and she's done 3 markets now and has had her first like $950. And my friends are like, how'd that happen? And I'm like, you know, it was in her and I just didn't stifle it. And she just has this confidence to put forward what she believes is really important and adorable and valuable. And my son is the same. And so now my friends are like, oh, what's happening with your kids? And I'm like, oh, yeah. But this is the integrity and the authenticity of when we really reveal who we are. Who I am professionally is exactly who I am as a mom. It's exactly who I am as a wife. It's who I am as a friend. And we've been taught that that is not professional, right? That a doctor has to have this level of like professionalism where he's cold and detached and observes without being impacted. And I go, no, I will cry with my clients. Like I will be so vested beside them. And I think that energy is the most encouraging, nurturing energy that there is on the planet, because someone's willing to actually feel it with you, right? Just as you're doing with me today, Felicia. Feeling it with me.
It's a good feeling.
Yeah, no, it is, because you've given yourself this level of freedom and liberation. And I can feel how cathartic that's been for you. That's been hard won for you. It's
Oh, I
beautiful.
absolutely, what I'm doing, I absolutely love this. I mean, I obviously don't make any money off of a podcast, and I literally kill myself to do these because I have so many other things going on, but I love it.
Mhm.
I absolutely
Mhm.
love it. And I don't know, it's something in me. So this is actually Christmas time was when I launched my first episode last year. So I've gone consistently for pretty much a year. And
Wow.
I've posted, I gave myself a deadline. Every Monday I would release an episode, and I have pulled friends in to get a episode recorded last minute. I started it with somebody else that it didn't work out with and had to revamp everything. And like, it has been a journey, but it has been a
Mhm.
consistent journey that I absolutely love.
Wow. And this is devotion. This is the mess that allows the evolution, allows like the progression of that trial and error phase to actually become what it is now. So huge congratulations to you, Felicia.
Thanks.
So impressive, the devotion that you've given to this.
I love it. I love it. So, to kind of round everything out, do you want to kind of give some last words? Anything you want to
Yeah,
share?
yeah, I really want to encourage anyone who is afraid to shed a version of themselves that someone else loves to realize that the comfort that you can have in finding that genuine, sincere bond with yourself is more important than any attachment to any form of love that you've ever known. And that the moment you give that to yourself, you'll be able to see other people giving that to themselves too. And so I feel like the more we can embody this personally and professionally, we're actually going to move towards a world that's actually for everyone, right? Where we actually have the ability where everyone's catered to, everyone's considered, everyone is seen, everyone is witnessed. And we all have the capacity for that. But we've just been given this very, very narrow bandwidth because we're so caught up with the pretending and the masquerading that there's so many people not being seen, heard, supported, and it's not okay.
I love that. I love that. Um, well, I thank you so, so much for coming on, talking about your story, and really giving some great conversation back and forth, good advice for everybody. I think both of us kind of got a little vulnerable here, which is
Yeah,
nice.
beautiful. I'm so moved.
So until next time, guys,
Mm,
bye.
thanks so much, Alicia.